Hey guys, welcome back to the Taken to Phyrix podcast. Episode kind of 2.5 is what we're sticking with. This is a collab with Max from Bearfoot Miniatures. This is actually part 2 of the podcast. Part 1 is going to be available over on his YouTube channel, which we'll have linked down below. So please go check that out, and we'll pick it up from there. For those that watched part 1 already, you'll notice that Lucas has had to step away. We're going to just go ahead and move on through this. In part 1, we sort of went over Max's first impressions. It was his first Adepticon, and we went over our different perspectives of the heresy, from a first-time player to a first-time event runner at Adepticon. And we went over sort of day 1 of that, so it's sort of a setup. So, Max, if you really quickly just want to reintroduce yourself for those that might be seeing this first time on our channel.
Yeah, so I'm Max from Bearfoot Miniatures, as you've said. I've got a gaming channel that just started. It's not even a year old yet. That I try to put out heresy content every 2 weeks for the games, and then I've got sort of a smaller game system like Battlefleet Gothic, Necromunda, Mordheim, or Warhammer Fantasy that I do on sort of the off week from heresy. So we were actually just talking about. So I'd come over to Adepticon because it's like the biggest event I'm going to say in the world. Like, I've not been to many others, but it's the one that you hear about all the time. Like in the UK, we've got a very focused system on. We've got a thing called Salute, which is like similar, but it's mainly focused on Games Workshop and their events. We have got obviously like sort of a third party indie scene that's very good, in fact, but nothing like Adepticon is what I'm trying to say. So I was jumping into this. We were just in the middle of talking about Station Upsilon, and I'm jumping into this as a new player. So as an event organizer that has just, as you say, run your first events, what were you thinking about in terms of new players joining your Adepticon? Your Adepticon crowd. Your Adepticon scene.
So, it was kind of a difficult thing. We talked about it beforehand in our initial planning meeting. In episode 1, we kind of talked a little bit about the history of it, but I'll touch on it briefly. So, the previous operator of Phyrix, David Coleman, passed away in December, and he was already signed up to Adepticon. He did Adepticon last year, but chose to keep it a separate event with its own narrative. It wasn't tied to Phyrix directly. So this was going to be the first time that Phyrix was going to be at Adepticon. And like we said, it's a series that's been running since 2017. So when we sat down to sort of flesh out the story, one of the things we really wanted to consider is this is something that's been running for 5 years at this point. I know the history of it. Everybody, all the regulars, we have a very solid core of guys that just come to every one of our events for the most part. Those guys all know the story, but we're going to have a huge audience here, and I want people to be bought in on the story, right? Because everything in this campaign, we just wanted it to be story, right? We had a really interesting hook. We had a really interesting idea for the system that they're going to be playing in inside the Phyrix narrative. And so we started from block 1, right? And in the first 2 chapters of the audio narrative, you can actually hear those are actually the previous major events from the Phyrix campaign, summarized down to, an engagement summary, read off by a guy. Actually read off by Voldemort's, not a guy, Voldemort's Guide to Warhammer here on YouTube. He's a very, very good narrator. I was excited to get him on. He did a great job, and we're going to hopefully work with him in the future going forward. So those first 2 chapters are really just, these are events that happened 4 years ago and 3 years ago, something like that. The major Phyrix chapter ender kind of deals. So those first 2 chapters will set that up, and then the third chapter was, okay, now that you've kind of got a history of who's won where, how they've, how the sides have sort of maneuvered through the system together, why you're here, period. And then now we're going to launch you into, this is what Adepticon's about. And so chapter 3 lays out not only the setting of the planet and what's going on, but also sets up the narrative hooks for what are you fighting over? It's not very clear. I mean, it's another planet. We fight over planets all the time. There's something a little eerie about what's going on here, and we knew going in that the post Adepticon story, at least from our perspective, was going to be really good. I'm really happy with how the post Adepticon story went. We did some really interesting stuff with it. We narratively have removed. Well, no spoilers. If you haven't listened to Chapter 4 and you don't want to be spoiled, pause here, go listen to Chapter 4, and then come back. And if you don't care, basically, in this narrative, we have written Primarchs out of Phyrix completely. We knew before we even went to Adepticon, we knew that we were going to allow Primarchs at Adepticon, but we really want to shift to more of a storytelling atmosphere. And like my personal Phyrix army has always run a Praetor. From day one that I was in the system, I run the same Praetor in my army now. And I feel like that's more fun when you're invested in the stories of these guys. So we knew we were going to narratively write them out. And I think we came up with a really cool way to do that. So I'm still not going to spoil it completely, but if you haven't listened to it, I think it's like a 45-minute runtime now from beginning to end. So we're kind of entering that audio novel territory, which is kind of fun, but it's a good story.
Yeah, and it's something that someone could just listen to on their way to work or whatever, to just get invested in this. Like, these reasons too that I think would be cool for people, even if you're not going to Adepticon. It's, I think, worthwhile, or like one of the Phyrix events that you'll be running.
It's just a good thing to listen to.
Yeah, and I think it'll be good to follow along these stories that you're creating, like outside of. They're some of the most interesting to me are actually the stories created outside the main narrative, and that sort of does exclude named characters and Primarchs. I prefer playing without that. Obviously, at the start of Heresy, of Heresy 2, we've all sort of got our fix and fill of Primarchs, I think. And I think it's cool to get people to actually, they think about it a bit more, rather than being like, right, here's, for Iron Warriors, here's Perturabo, and that's just Perturabo's force. That's pretty much it done. Whereas tying into a narrative game, as you're saying, and we were saying in the first segment, it's going to make people think about their forces more, or at least allow it. Is to like, right, what's your Praetor's name? What's he done before? Why are they in this system? Rather than just Primarch rocks up because Primarch is everywhere.
Right. Yeah, for me, it was always a non-starter. Like I love the Blood Angels. I love Sanguinius, right? But I have the full fancy base version that Forge World dropped. I bought it day one, like any loyal Blood Angel player should. It's not assembled though, because I don't really have an interest in playing with him because I know his story. There's nothing that I can do with him on a tabletop, or it kind of ruins the suspension of belief, I guess. If I play with him on the tabletop, I'm making an event happen that I know narratively wasn't documented with him. And for me, it kind of breaks that immersion. Whereas if it's like, oh, yeah, this is the same Praetor that's been in Phyrix. He's been in Phyrix longer than anybody at Adepticons has, with the exception of a couple of regulars that came to Adepticon with us. And I'm like, this guy's way more experienced at what's going on here. He knows the full story. He's more in tune with what's going to happen, that kind of stuff. And I think it's more fun that way. So us kind of killing the narrative characters or the named characters and the Primarchs out of the story, giving a narrative reason for why they can't exist in the space. I think it's a fun way to maybe even approach people with the idea of it. Because, for all I know, there's players out there that don't think of their army that way. They're just like, I want to play so-and-so's sergeant, named character guy, and I just want to be his army, or his section of the army or whatever.
Or even there's lots of people, obviously, that like to take bits out of the novels that aren't named characters in the rules, but named characters in the novels. And obviously, that's their own segment of the narrative that doesn't have to conflict with anyone else's.
Mhm.
Whereas it's more the I think the Primarchs and those very top level characters that are named within the rules,
Mhm.
like Sigismund
Right.
or things like that, where we know where they are, all
Mhm.
segments of the heresy.
Yeah.
Whereas,
It's kind of
as you
hard
say,
how if you're playing in a system that's so isolated narratively like Phyrix is, and you're just like, yeah, every Primarch in the Imperium and the Traitor side showed up here, but it was black sided. We
there's
we
no
we
name. Yeah,
erased all evidence of it ever.
yeah,
Um, yeah, because I don't know. And so I hope that it inspires people, and that was kind of the fun thing about a linked narrative 3-day thing is as you go through the weekend, the first day, there's people that are really into the narrative and will just write the most amazing flourish stories for that blurb on our rule sheet. And then there's other people that'll just write, you know, so and so did something really simple. I think somebody wrote Leave and Rest charged, right? Like, okay, I guess that's a big thing for you. I'm excited for you, but it's like, but then you come back the next day and those guys are signed up again, most of them, and it's like,
Mm.
oh, they're leaning into it a little bit more. Now they're sort of understanding how the points of interest work, and it's you're starting to get stories where it's like, this berserker squad rummaged through this open container and found this teleport device, and you know
yeah,
sacrificed a navigator in hopes that they wouldn't die jumping through the portal. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so
Well, I
you're
think
you're
that's
creating
something that
those moments.
you've got well with the actual narrative that you've had recorded on, like as you said, that's below on the link tree.
Mhm.
The that it will tie those new players in, as well as people only need a couple of games to get a narrative formed within the head, because it
Mhm.
starts emerging after the first game,
Yeah.
and then to be tied in by having this like professional level quality,
Yeah.
um, like audio drama,
Hmm.
I think is a real benefit
I think so
for
too.
Phyrix from the outside.
I know that was one thing that David always strived for, right? Was better storytelling. He was really big about that. He didn't even play Horus Heresy. Like, he was an event organizer that ran an event for 5 years, and I think he played maybe one or two games. Like, he was just all in though on telling the story that he had come up with, and it was amazing and hooked all of us as we've been going, right? And so, like I said, we wanted to really try and share that. We thought the narrative thing would be a very good way to do that. We got lucky with the voice actor, and here we go. But I know that was kind of one of the things that we would have powwow meetings like every week or two to make sure that we're on track, with where we want to be. And in those meetings, one of the things that we were always reinforcing is the goal of Felix, if I have to sum it up in one sentence, is we want to bring that small 6 to 8 player local game store group that everybody has, right?
Mm.
That plays narrative games that are really funny and relaxed and everybody knows everyone, and bring that to the convention and play it on 25 tables with 50 players, right? And
Yeah,
then take it to Mega ZM and do all this. But we wanted it to feel like that close, intimate kind of everybody here's a friend of me, right? Because there's a lot of regulars that come to Adepticon year after year after year. And so you end up playing against the same people year after year after year. And, people carry rivalries and all kinds of stuff. And that was always sort of a central goal of ours is how do we bring that small store experience to a big game convention. And I think we were really, really successful with it.
yeah. Like I think it's from because I only played the Station Upsilon, but I think it seemed from speaking to other people that I'd played, say like Attrition Day One, so I'd been speaking to, and
Mm,
then they played Phyrix on other days. It seemed that you'd accomplished that quite well.
yeah.
I think from the outside, he's definitely one that. So, in like I've just got back. We were recording this 2 hours after I stepped off the plane,
Yeah.
coming back from the States. And the plans have been going wild in my head to go back to
Mhm.
Adepticon. I think that's a quite good summary of my
Yeah.
experience of Adepticon. Is I'm already trying to go back,
I hope
um,
so.
and it's Phyrix is definitely one that I will be striving to look into.
Hmm.
So because I was signed up to Phyrix on the Saturday, so the third
Hmm.
day of Outer Reaches, um, and I was just exhausted by the end. It's a very busy week or half week
It
of just
is.
gaming and meeting people.
Hmm.
And it's one of the things is actually it wasn't Phyrix, it was just anything that I was going to be doing on Saturday.
Hmm.
It ended up that it would have been that was dropped.
Yeah.
So it's one thing that I want to do coming back to Adepticon is definitely do some of the Phyrix events.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's
Maybe
something
not a
that,
full load, but
yeah.
in that I crashed at the end of this week as well.
Hmm.
And it might happen again. But I definitely try and get to a good number.
Yeah.
Or
And you gotta,
maybe not with you two games a day.
yeah. I don't
Like
think you'd have a problem. We had a lot of people that got into all 3 days. And there were even people okay, so as a first time Adepticon guy, maybe you were, or you won't be as familiar with this, but at Adepticon, we always call it like the Friday or the Saturday slump. Okay,
mm,
people wait all year to come to Adepticon, and they get there, and maybe they don't get to party a lot when they're at home, and so they get there and they're like slamming the whiskey and slamming the beers, and the next morning they have an event that starts at 9 and they're not there, right? It
mm,
happened to us. We had to fill a ton of slots on the second day of the Phyrix campaign. But there's also a ton of people that don't get into the event that just come up there. Maybe they got day one and day. In fact, I know we had two people that didn't get into day two, but did get into day one and day three, and they were there that next morning and were able to just slot right in and go. Right? No,
mm.
we didn't. You just pay your little $10 entry fee and you're in and you go. Um, and so it's really common in Adepticon, especially with everything that's there, right?
Yeah.
I know, like for example, one of the guys that was set to play with us on the second day ended up not coming or not playing because an opening came up in one of the classes, the pink classes, because there's a whole bunch of hobby stuff going on there too, right? It's
Yeah.
not just
Yeah. Yeah.
wargaming. It's like painting classes by every painting YouTuber you've ever heard of, right?
Yeah.
And some you haven't. And so, there's a lot of schedule juggling, but generally speaking, if you want to play, you can play. And I think a 3 day Phyrix thing is probably pretty doable for you. I think it's
Yeah.
2 games a day is a pretty good pace, I think, you know?
Yeah. Well, I managed that amount of games
Hmm.
over the week.
Yeah.
So yeah, as you say, especially I'm so sold on 2 games a day. I
Hmm.
went to an event earlier in the year, Rakillian Wars in the UK,
Hmm.
that was 2 games a day, and it just worked perfectly. And I think you guys as well, nailed it. 2 games a
Hmm.
day. It seemed pretty, people had time to
Yeah,
talk, this and
exactly.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because that's what
and
we're trying to build as a community, right? We want to take
yeah,
Phyrix outside of the cons and keep doing. David always did a local circuit stuff, like in the Midwest here in the U.S.,
mm,
and we want to keep doing that. And the only way to do that is to have regulars that will follow and travel to do the story, right? And so yeah, I think it was awesome. But I guess let's shift into to what you did on Friday. So I think on Friday you were playing the doubles. Is that right?
yeah. So I played the tag teams doubles with Drew,
Hmm.
who I'd mentioned made the Adepticon trip pretty much possible by helping me organize.
Yeah.
So
Shout out to Drew, man.
yeah, oh no, honestly, massive help because I'm so unorganized. It's untrue. Everything is like a scramble for me to do. So it made it. And we were talking about the system of Adepticon, right? Trying to get onto the system in the last
Mhm.
segment. That would have just been a nightmare. It was a nightmare anyway, but it would have been a more of a nightmare.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
but
a
yeah,
rite of passage in itself for sure.
I played the tag teams with Drew, who's playing Word Bearers, um, and we we played either played 2 games in the day because it was a bit two versus two games always bogged down, right? Because it's you sort of want to watch that other player, like what's going on over there? They're doing something interesting. Like I'm going to wait firing my tactical marines at this unit, so then it takes twice the time
Hmm.
because you're all watching someone else doing something.
Right.
But so we played the planetfall scenario, which they'd done, which was basically shatter strike, so 2 victory points for each scoring unit and 1 victory point for each denial in the enemy's deployment zone at the end of the game. Um, we played that hammer and anvil, so it's like sort of lengthways on the table rather than the Dawn of War. And we played against a Sisters of Silence and what was it, Blood Angels, Fury of the Ancients list. Now, the shake of the head.
I heard. Well, the thing is, I never saw that combination on the board. Like I wasn't. I was busy running my own stuff on our side. But I heard as soon as that hit the table, you know what I mean? Whispers travel fast in that room. And someone was like, "Oh, somebody's got Sisters with a Fury list. Someone's got Sisters with a Fury list." And it was just like, "Oh my! How did that play though? Like honestly."
So Fury was Fury. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll start this by saying they were actually super nice guys. Like, we had a few beers across the game. It was
Mm-hmm.
a really good atmosphere. The actual game, and this is something that I'd actually been prepared for. The day before, I'd been informed that weirdly the tag teams, which I was expecting to be the most relaxed thing across the weekend, was actually like the stealth competitive one,
Mm-hmm.
which I just was not expecting at all.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I really didn't expect. Like normally tag teams is like you just laughing and joking,
Mm-hmm.
but no, he's Fury played like Fury. Sisters just it's getting used to Sisters as an army.
Yeah.
They had like one of the HQ choices means that you count everything as being 12 inches further away
Mm-hmm.
than they actually are
Right.
by like a combination of like I think it's disruptor field and maybe shroud bombs or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So oh my god, that was harsh, and you can't do any reactions to a unit that includes that HQ.
That's crazy.
So he he basically got that moment that I love it when I was playing Iron Warriors in 1.0 was like take a leadership test for that. Oh no, I don't take leadership tests. He got that in reverse of like, oh, I'm going to react to that. Oh no, you can't react to that. Like and it
That's
was
funny.
oh, it's you miss them so much when you can't do. So he's saving my reaction points all turn to react to that, and I'd
Mm-hmm.
forget every turn. Um, so that was a bit. It was a bit harsh. We got like properly rolled
Yeah.
by this list. Um, one
Yeah.
of the
The
things was,
the
God,
distance mechanics, like the Sisters you're explaining, those
mm,
always throw me off. I lose more games because I forget that exists in the turn, and I'm just like,
mm,
okay, I'm gonna move. Okay, these guys are in range now. I'm set. I've set the trap. We're gonna spring it, and then it's like, oh nope, everything counts as 6 or 12 inches further away. Sorry, you
mm,
forgot about it. Catch you next
yeah.
turn. You know what I mean?
Well, it's 12 inches
Yeah,
as
that's
well
a
though. Is
crazy.
like I popped out of my Seekers out of a Rhino with the combi melter
Hmm.
and was like, haha, I've got you now. And I did not have him because the
No,
combi melter counted as 12 inches further away.
right,
And I was like, because he's then obviously like, there's nothing you can do to get that combi melter in range.
right. Yeah, that's so
The
crazy, dude.
Also, Sisters watch out for the jet bikes. They've got these like sort of uh, grapnel nets
Okay.
that if they hit you, I
Hmm.
think it's if they wound, you don't take an armor save, something like that. You just minus your movement by one for every one that hits you for the entire unit. So if you have 6 jet bikes all with these, that's -6 down
Oh
to a
my
minimum of
goodness.
one, but -6.
It's
So
like
you're moving.
you're dealing with this, and then there's nothing but dreadnoughts stomping around on the other side of the table, just punching everything out.
Yeah, exactly. Luckily, he had some cyber caimans to
Hmm.
like sort of bring it back because
Hmm.
I mean, cyber caimans look cool. He had one painted blue, so that was my boy Blue
Yep,
from if anyone's watched Old
exactly.
School.
Yep.
so, so that joke was made like it only got funnier the more we made it. So it was
Hmm.
made back 30 times per game,
Yeah,
and
that's good.
then so it was a fun game though. Like I enjoyed playing them. We then set up for the painting award thing and
Hmm.
decided, let's actually just set up instead of two two person like sets.
Yeah.
We did it as a battle scene, all
Uh-huh.
4 armies.
Yeah, yeah.
So we did that. That was quite just like a fun little thing
Hmm.
to do. I don't think it helped us, but it, it was a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Um,
That's actually an interesting fact. So forking off of that, how I would be interested to see what's your impression? How competitive do you think the painting hobbying of the average army at Adepticon was versus what you're used to?
um, oh, who do I insult? So, no, so I think it was. I think it was to a high standard.
Hmm.
Like comparison to the rest of the heresy community, probably very similar.
Yeah.
Like it's. I think all of the heresy community has a high standard
Oh yeah.
and definitely a high standard of effort,
Hmm.
which I think is the key bit.
Yeah.
And out of that high standard of effort, you're bound to get a good number of armies.
Hmm.
Because we've got Little Legend. Big shout out to Miles, who I had
Yeah.
breakfast with most days. Our scheming breakfast. Like we've got the Cult of Paint guys. Like
Hmm.
they used to be like MKA,
Yeah.
which I know like Matt Kane is now working with Miles. So there's them that are all teaching classes to a high level, and then
Right.
there's lots of commission painters that are also like doing tutorials.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's just right. Like the community standards have just risen
Yeah.
because people are willing to put in that extra time.
Yeah. I can
Um,
tell you from my side, just even judging the paint competitions in our stuff, like 20 or 50 players, that's so many armies, man.
yeah,
And a lot of times it was just like, okay, we were, we had 3 organizers there, so we'd walk through each individually and just sort of grab the ones that we thought in the order that
yeah,
we thought, and then just really quickly cross compare everything and see, okay, do we have a common number 1? Do we have a common number 2? You know what I mean? And then we would
yeah,
have to have these like second and third walk-bys sometimes to really like suss out which ones, because we had best thematic awards, we had, you know, the best painted, we had the narrative stuff, we had best weathering, even that was sponsored by um, Make by Jimenez. And
yes,
so it's like your stuff, you happen to go through and you're like, okay, this guy's probably number 2 overall, but his weathering is number 1 overall, so we're going to give him that, and then we're going to give this guy this. And dude, it was hard every
mm,
day. It was so hard, but I saw some amazingly cool armies, and it really fires me up every time I go to Adepticon and I see everything. As someone who like really appreciates the hobby side of the hobby,
yeah,
um, I always come home and I'm like, I don't even think my paint. I bring a kit every every year. Even it's I don't know why, because I never get to sit down and paint anything. But I'm just like, oh man, if I do get a chance, I'll be here. That kit didn't even make it into the house, like downstairs. My hobby
yeah,
desk is right over here. It's up on my dining room table. I immediately started smashing into one of the minis I had taken to the event. I wanted to get down some extra stuff, so I've been working on that. And yeah, to me, that's probably my favorite part is you go there and everybody's army is a 10, and you're like, what? You
yeah.
know, it's
Well, I
one of
think
the
it's
few
with how
things.
invested people are with the army, and I think it's down to more stuff like the narrative focus on the games and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Like, and there's always going to be that person that's like, oh, I tried heresy and got absolutely smashed off the table, right?
Hmm.
But there's not as much of that, I would say,
Hmm.
and I think that feeds into the hobby side being more prevalent as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well,
So
so what was did you have a second game on the double side?
I did, I did. Um, what did we? Oh no, we can edit this out, right?
No, it's all live, man. We're
Oh
rolling with it.
no.
It's all good.
Ah,
Um,
uh, what did I play second?
Max has had a very long week, guys. Just to put that out. He's been all around the
No.
world. He's had first living the lifetime experiences at Adepticon.
Yeah, and then I went to Colorado and drank lots of
Yeah.
Lots of the IPA that they've got there. So I've been
Yeah.
absolutely trashed.
Yeah, and you're just off the plane too, so it's okay if you don't remember the name. We can add it. I tell you what, if you remember it while you're talking about it, or if you don't remember it while we're talking about it, I'll add it to the description below. We'll call them out, give them a special shout out right
Yeah,
in the
let's do that.
link
Let's do
below.
that. But I'm gonna have to. I'm so sorry. Like
It, it
it's just drawing a complete blank.
it's hard, man. Do you know what armies they played?
No, you see, if I
Oh, you
remembered the armies,
spaced on
that
the
would
whole
be.
thing.
It would straight away come back.
It's
It's
all good. It's all good. Well, we ran from an event runner side on the Phyrix side. We ran another day of Upsilon and another day of Outer Reaches. So basically, the big thing with day 2 was that the ZM outcome from the night before actually affected the tables of day 2. So even though the traders overall lost a ZM that night before, they were actually able to get control of the orbital cannons and the comms array. So even though they lost the actual engagement, they won the actual objectives that affected the tables the most the next day. And because they were behind, it actually worked out really well. So basically, twice during the day, we would randomly roll off, and because we had rows of 6 tables, in a line, we'd roll a d6, and whoever's table came up, that was the one who got a big pie plate, and you just walk by and give it to them, and that honestly made for some fun shenanigans. We had a Emperor's Children guy on day 3, just kind of jumping forward. Day 3, he got the pie plate and then proceeded to scatter it onto his own unit and destroyed half of his army with that blast. Like detonated the transport they were in and killed. It was ridiculous.
yeah, that's one of the things that you've just got to be prepared for in
Mm-hmm.
like in a narrative game. Like
Mm-hmm.
random stuff is going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and I think just entering it with that mindset that that's okay,
Yeah.
and like it giveth and it taketh away.
Yeah.
Is
It was really cool. He wrote it up narratively really well too. He was in the little blurb after the table. He wrote it up and pitched it as like, the guy that was targeting everything for them, had a mistake in his head and mistargeted and blew up his own guy. So you have to take it with take it with everything else. But our event ran really well that day. We had a couple drops, which was normal for the day. But I think we ended up with only like maybe 2 or 3 spots empty. And honestly, by the end of the day, I think we filled every spot because I think at lunch we had people jump in to just fill the empty tables. So that was really good. So
yeah.
and then I guess, did you remember the name?
I did. Do you know what? I've remembered the armies. It's 2 guys from New York. One, I can even remember that one came from one side of New York, and it was like 4 hours further than the other one.
Mm-hmm.
But they played Iron Warriors and Alpha Legion, and it was 2 guys that I actually remembered mostly from the Predator Wrestling that we'll get into in a minute. But that's why I couldn't remember them. So they had these great armies that they both themed around. Because it was the tag teams, they themed around the Iron Warriors Alpha Legion fight where it's like on the Mechanicum world with Curvalen.
Mm-hmm.
God, what's that? Jesus, I can't remember anything today. So so it's in book 3 where Curvalen rocks up on the Mechanicum planet. So they had the Alpha Legion with Castellax and Iron Warriors that like both generals were Pravians, and the Iron Warriors had Vorax.
Oh, wow.
So they'd done this. The Alpha Legion player was playing with Efrit squad, and we'd sort of lined up across our deployment zone, and accidentally given this big space of which the Alpha Legion player could infiltrate behind us. So that caused us massive problems. We had 2 Scorpius hiding behind a building, and they just got taken out all game. Like he was very unlucky and only stunned us. That was on the left flank, but my Seekers did some work and assassinated the very disloyal loyalist Iron
Yeah.
Warriors general in the first turn.
Mhm.
And it was a very good fun game. Like that was beer shared as well.
Yeah.
I cannot. I'm so sorry. I forgot like this game before because it was actually one of the highlights of the weekend gaming wise.
Mhm.
But it's my main my main remembrance of both of them is the Predator wrestling,
Yeah.
which we can
Yeah,
get
yeah.
into in a second.
Yeah, yeah, which actually, so we had two things sort of going. Well, the first thing we did was our Mega ZM run of night 2, and
Mm.
that was again an 8v8 on the 18-foot table, all the objectives, all the POI systems, all the Phyrix stuff going. That one was a little bit more, um, I don't know. It ran really, 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 really smooth the second night. The first night it ran really well, but the second night it was like, I don't know. I don't. I'm pretty sure we had no one that played both nights of ZM, so it wouldn't have been someone who like carried over from the day before. But
Yeah,
it just seemed to just there were no issues. Everybody just sort of went, and they finished really early, like 2 hours before we had to wrap. So it was
yeah,
crazy, but the feedback from that always really really good. So that was a good way to cap off the ZM for Adepticon. You know, it's something that travels with. I mentioned this before, but it's something that's sort of become a headline sort of deal with Phyrix. So it travels with us everywhere we go, and it was nice to bring it to Adepticon and show people that mega battles don't have to only be Titans,
yeah.
or a bunch of tanks or a bunch of Lords of War. You can do it with breacher squads and you know, support Marines or whatever you want, right?
No, like we went over it in segment one, but
Hmm.
as I said, then it worked really well. Like it, and that is the thing, isn't it? It's the mega battles. I know a lot of people like them for Titans, but it's exactly what you say. It's I like them for the fact that well, you get this interactive experience with multiple people that I think worked really well
Hmm.
on that ZM with how you set it up.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk about the highlight event of Saturday night, um, and that's Praetor Wrestling.
It was,
So
and it's. I think I'm already breaking the first rule of Predator Wrestling
you are.
by talking about
I'm
Predator
sure
Wrestling, but
JP would approve, though. As a first time attendee, we'll let you kind of leak a little bit
well,
about it.
it's got to be done. So because this is honestly one thing that can only be the there's no rules pack for Predator Wrestling, right?
Hmm.
And
It's not
it's
even an official event for those that don't
no,
know.
no, it's
You find out about it because somebody else knows about it, but you don't talk about it because nobody talks about Praetor Wrestling, right?
except the people that obviously do.
Hmm. Exactly.
So
It's
yeah,
the
it's the
worst kept secret in the heresy hall, right?
yeah. So after after lunch, we built this. Me and JP built um, a wrestling ring for the Predator Wrestling, and JP was running essentially doing the announcements
Hmm.
along with George from Spacemen with Guns
Hmm.
podcast. Um, and it was, do you know what? It was people are into wrestling over here, right? But it's not quite the same.
Right.
It's not quite to the same degree as everyone was very clearly into wrestling
Hmm.
in the States.
Yeah.
So
Did you pick a walkout song for your
uh,
Praetor?
yes, I did. So I picked the Top Gun song where they're
Oh yeah.
playing beach volleyball.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's a
Uh,
good one. That's a good one.
yeah, I
But
thought I'd go opposite from awesome and just
yeah,
like be
that's
playing
awesome,
with the
though.
boys.
Yeah, so basically you have the ring set up, and JP, the Age of Darkness podcast, he actually jumps out on the mic and full WWE intros. Music hits, guys walk down, like he's just talking, he's giving weights and in weird measurements, relative to the army that the Praetor's from. And, I think like he announced a world eater with like, some number of buckets of blood and guts from, some fight that they had. And
Yeah,
it's just full blown ridiculousness. right?
Yeah. So you start off by like doing your Praetor battles, and they're all 1-on-1s to begin with for the first few rounds. You get a bonus if you like go off the ropes, and then it's sort of starts creeping in that actually you can sort of just make up and do anything that you want. So like you can hit someone with a chair
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
jump.
I mean, to be fair, it starts at like 10 p.m., right? So it's like everybody's been drinking all day. And by the end of Prater Wrestling, I know there were two guys with their shirts off, just running around
Yeah.
like lunatics, right?
So one of them was friends with the guys from New York that I said had played second in the tag teams, because like so he was very into it. He was very wrestling about everything,
Hmm.
um, and the the Iron Warriors player that I played was just yelling, "Give him the claw! Give him the claw!" to everyone that because there was like 5 Iron Warriors
Hmm.
taking part in it. So
Yeah.
he's just the standard chant whenever an Iron Warriors player was in there. Give him the claw! Give him the claw! He's just so good as you sort of made up that your Praetor like got on top of on top of a set of steps and jumped off onto the other Praetor. We had people like tagging in and out.
Yeah.
If you could get to the ropes, like passing
Hmm.
the initiative test to break combat, and if you did, you could get to the ropes and tag in and out.
Yeah.
Um, and then it culminated in a battle royale with
Right.
I think like 10 Praetors because we ran out of time essentially, but
Yeah.
that then just made it actually a lot funnier.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. It's
so,
awesome. It's a highlight for sure. I think we're gonna start running our own local Phyrix Prater wrestling circuit. You know what I mean? I think
yeah,
it's one of those things. It's so easy to set up and such a fun, hey, we're done for the night, but we've got the hall till midnight. Let's just do something
yeah.
stupid, you know?
Well, I think it's got to be done with the right attitude as well.
Hmm.
Like I did, like enter being the first time I'd done Praetor wrestling, I didn't know whether everyone would just be like, "Oh, my Praetor walks up to your Praetor and like thunderhammers in him in the face,"
Hmm.
right? Which you do, and then it's just like whoever rolls better for 4 hours.
Right.
But it wasn't. It all comes down to the fact that anything goes. And you've got to be cool with literally anything happening and
Hmm.
just go with it.
Yeah.
And everyone was diving in with their Praetors. Like the Alpha Legion player that I said had the Castellax in the tag teams
Hmm.
had waited until the last bit of the battle royale to to be like, I'm gonna like I appear on top of the thing and attack. And you've just got to roll with whatever's happening because it's wrestling.
Yeah.
It's wrestling. It's all about the crazy storylines
Right.
and the
Yeah.
performance on the night. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fun, dude. Just an absolute blast. That is one of the coolest things. I know we were talking about um getting with JP and getting him a 3D printed belt, so you can start giving out champ belts to. I feel like you
Yeah.
should get one for everybody should get one that participates, and then you get like a real proper champ belt, bigger, flashier, and you give that to the guy
Like
who
real
actually won
gilded.
it, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You give that to the guy that won. I tell you what, my Praetor would be rocking a champ belt if I had gotten a chance to get over there, but
Yeah,
we
but that
were we were busy doing some other stuff that night.
that gives rise to what you could do is have them split across and then have like one to unify the belts
Hmm.
like they do in boxing and stuff,
Yeah,
which would just
JP, I
be
think was talking about that,
great.
about wanting to set up local circuits, kind of like they do in wrestling, right? You'll have like the Kansas City circuit and the New York circuit and then once a year
But
you come together and you suss out. You got to figure out who's the baddest man of them all, right?
yeah. But it's like as you say, it's everyone's just been like having a good time for
Hmm.
the entirety of Adepticon, and it's just a great way to finish off that
Hmm.
Saturday night.
Absolutely.
Which, which I tell you what, this is one thing that really surprised me. Everyone goes home on a Sunday. What's up with that?
Okay. So our arm was kind of twisted this year because we had Golden Demon outside of the Nirvana Hall, and
Mm,
with Golden Demon being out there, they actually present the Golden Demon Award on Sundays. This year it was in the Nirvana Hall. So
yeah,
so Saturday after the second games were over, we actually packed everything up for Phyrix and pushed it all into a corner, and out of the way so that they could bring the stage in and all the chairs and all that and prep it for the Golden Demon giveaway in the morning. So it's honestly, as some for the people that drive there, I'm sure it's the same for you flying out, but for the people that drive, it does kind of make it nice because you can, some people will just dip as soon as Saturday's night's over if they haven't been drinking and carrying on. And then some people will, and some people will take Sunday morning and only drive like halfway and catch a hotel, somewhere along the way. It gives you a lot more flexibility with traveling home because I know I enjoyed it. I was honestly, by the time Sunday came, I was so exhausted from running the events with the guys that I had run the events, I had met with vendors, I had met with all the podcasters and the YouTubers and everybody, and it was a lot. And so come Sunday, I was like, I had 7-hour drive home, and I think 6 hours of it, I just rode with like Zen music playing in my headphones, just driving down the highway, just, okay.
To not be overstimulated on the drive.
Oh, because our day so much was just, I mean, you can attest to it. Like even when we ran into each other the second day and really finally figured out who each other were, it was like, I'm talking to you, but I had literally have just come from running an event for 6 hours. I've got this 10-minute block. We can talk here. And then our talk carried over, but I was doing other stuff while that's going on to prep for the ZM stuff. And it's just a constant from the moment you get up. Like even in the morning, like you said, you're having breakfast with Miles from Little Legend, So really, from a content creator perspective, you have to be on from the moment you get up, Like you can't stroll down there and just be Mr. Grumpy Pants,
I tell you what, it was a real hard life getting breakfast with Miles.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was, my complaints are big.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I definitely see it more from your side where you, as an event organizer, you've got to give people a good experience, right?
Yeah.
Whereas mine was laughing and joking with Miles.
Yeah. I wish I would have had time, man. He invited me down and I was just like, look, I've got to be one thing I will say about our events too that I was really, really happy about is we planned for a lot of contingencies. And so every event that we ran started on time. Like if it was the morning starting at 9, by 9 o'clock, people were pairing off and getting their tables. By 9:15, backfills happened and everybody's rolling dice by 9:30,
Yeah.
And after lunch, the same thing. And so everything was on a tight timer. And I was really happy with that because a lot of the times, especially with some of the events that I've been to, it's like, oh, it's a 9 o'clock event, but you really will just stand around and bullshit for an hour because packets aren't ready or because the points of interest aren't out or whatever, right? And we have all these systems on top of everything. So we were getting there about 8 in the morning every morning, prepping, start at 9 and go.
No, I think it definitely helps. It might sound too strict for you to be so strict on the timing, but actually that makes it run as a more relaxed experience for everyone else. You putting in that effort definitely makes it run much nicer for the people attending the event.
Yeah, for sure. I think so. And I think also with the hard cutoff of 9:15, if you're not there, if you're signed up and we have your money already, there's no, if you're still waking up in your hotel room or whatever, you already know where we stand. If it's 9:15, your spot's gone. We have to, because for every person that doesn't show up, you're potentially now dealing with an odd players number. And we brought our own armies to step in and fill spots as we needed to, so that one of the EOs could step in and play if we need to in a pinch. But thankfully, we were able to pick up players every day, so that we didn't have to do that. But yeah, it was nice. I would love to be laid back. I'm a laid back guy, very very much by nature.
Yeah.
And I would love to just be, we'll just see how it goes. But with this, it was very much, no, this is a ship, and it has to be done because at the end of the day at 5 o'clock, we've got to prep for ZM. We've got this going on till 11. Then we got, business stuff to do in the middle. And yeah, but it went well.
Yeah. No, I definitely think it came across that way. Like, it came across really tight.
Yeah.
And as I said, I'm definitely going to be on it next year as
Yeah.
soon as I can get to Adepticon.
Yeah. I think if you can make it, man, give me a heads up and I'll see what I can do to hopefully give you a clue as to what we're going to be doing. I know if you're ever in the States again visiting your sister, let me know because I might have something. Our plan post Adepticon. This actually will be a good lead into something else I want to talk about. Post Adepticon, we're going to be doing quarterly events. That's what we're striving to. So every 2 months, new event for Phyrix.
Yeah.
And that's a full event. We're not talking small little things. We're talking as many tables as we can sell tickets for. We'll set up full written narrative, full audio, audio drama or narrated, and then continuing the story of Phyrix all the way around every 2 months, all the way around to Adepticon. I think our end event will probably be in October this year. So we'll do 3 more events between now and October, and then we'll probably take the holiday season off just because I feel like it's crazy to try to, hey, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, why don't you come play Heresy with me?
Yeah. People are busy, and
Yeah.
it's like your time as well.
Yeah,
You
one of the
need a
things
rest.
we are trying to kick around an idea of like just sort of get an idea of who would be interested, and just doing sort of a nonchalant, non advancing the story forward, just a Christmas throwdown, that kind of thing in December. But we'll see when we get there. We got 3 more
Travel
events to
12 hours,
do.
pray to wrestling only.
Oh God, yeah, I'd be down, dude. I'd like to figure out a way for us to pray to wrestle across the internet. You know what I mean? Like me and you, we could just maybe I'll mail you a copy of my
That's the
Prater or
OnlyFans
something.
channel. That's the OnlyFans
Oh
channel.
yeah, hot
Check
Prater
the
on
link
Prater
just
action.
below.
Yeah, hot Prater on Prater action.
Yeah.
But that actually leads me into something else I wanted to talk about real quick. If I can plug our next event, if you're okay with that.
Well, we're now on your channel, so of course.
Yeah. All right. We have finally locked in, as of yesterday, we have locked in our next event. It's going to be Midwest Conquest. Midwest Conquest is a 40K competitive series that runs in the Midwest. So we'll be actually doing this out of Kansas City, or technically Independence, which is a suburb of Kansas City. Dates are May 26th or May 28th. That's Memorial Day weekend. We know that everybody normally has family plans for Memorial Day weekend, but we were lucky enough to be able to work with this vendor to join this, and we believe that hopefully some of you guys give you an alternative to just the day off doing barbecue all weekend. Tickets are going to be $80. They go live on April 15th on Best Coast Pairings. General overview of the events. So the $80 ticket will buy you access to everything that we do that weekend. So it's going to be a Friday night optional ZM game. This is not a mega ZM. This is probably going to be more on the lines of 1-on-1s, 2-on-2, something smaller. So we can better adapt to the number of players that might be traveling on Friday. And then Saturday, we're going to do 2 rounds of Frontline, just like we did at Adepticon, followed by a Mega ZM battle. Sunday will be another 2 rounds of Frontline. Then we'll give out the prizes for the weekend and get you guys on your way back home. So more info will be posted as we get it. Just make sure to go hit the link tree, join our Discord, and all the event info will be posted there, as well as the link tree going forward. Awesome.
Okay.
So I guess, Max, is there anything else that you really wanted to hammer out today?
Not today.
Not today?
I would love to come on again. And hopefully
Absolutely.
do some more stuff for you.
No, I think we're going to be pretty regular visitors for sure. I was lucky to meet you on day one. We, I think, became quick friends over the 2 days that we had left, and I'm looking forward to keep not only keeping you in the loop with what we're doing, but just talking about heresy in general. I think it's fun, and I think we hit a good stride.
Yeah.
Cool deal.
So,
Well, Max, you want to plug your YouTube one more time before we wrap it?
yeah, so that is Bearfoot Miniatures. If you've not hated listening to me for this entire time, hopefully you've not. We do videos once a week. Heresy is every other week. Oh, well, games once a week and a talking video once a week, and it's Heresy games every 2 weeks with a smaller game in between that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
His gameplay is really good, guys. I enjoy his channel a lot. I had actually somehow stumbled across your video before we started, before we met at Adepticon. So I think that's where that weird, like, God, he looks familiar, but I just can't place it. And I think it was a Blood Angels gameplay that I maybe had watched one day while I was at work. So, yeah, I think that's how that recognition happened. Anyways, I appreciate you guys taking the time to join us. On behalf of myself and Lucas, we appreciate you listening to the podcast, and there'll be more to come. We got a lot of these lined up, and we've got more coming for you in the future. All right, guys. Thank you.
Cheers.